Hello everybody and welcome back to the Young Fan Podcast. Today I'm going to do my League One semi-final playoff predictions. How Oxford United have scraped a sixth spot, the final spot of course in the playoffs, I will never know, but we're going to take it of course into our first semi-final against Blackpool. It's Oxford versus Blackpool, that's the first semi-final, and then the second semi-final is Lincoln against Sunderland. The first games are on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then the second legs are on the Friday and Saturday, so not much time. And some very, very important football to be played. Some crucial football that can really decide the futures of players, managers, and the actual football club. Will they be playing Championship football next season, or will they be playing League One football as they are now? All will be decided in the next few weeks. But today, we're going to be doing my semi-final prediction. I'm going to be predicting the first leg and the second leg of both of these semi-finals. Very, very excited. Very, very nervous, of course, being an Oxford United fan, now actually being part of the playoffs. Didn't think I was going to be, didn't think I was going to be a fan having to watch the playoffs this year. The heartbreak of last year, didn't know I was going to have to be part of it this year. Hopefully not the heartbreak side of it, and hopefully we're going to have a much better experience in these playoff games. We did one in the semi-final against Portsmouth, but we bottled it in the final against Wycombe as well, which is very, very disappointing. And I think if anything, that really does sum up how this is luck, lottery, and all those different aspects do come into this. However, you have got to be the best on your day, and then that's all you can ask really. It is a very, very different style of play, especially in the playoffs. They're normally very edgy encounters, and I certainly think that's going to be the same going into this playoffs. Anyway, before we start, please do subscribe to the channel. On the road to 240 subscribers right now, or even bigger road to 300. Please do hit that subscribe button. Be the person that gets us over the line, and make sure also you're hitting that notification bell as well, so you don't want to miss an episode of the podcast. We've got live stuff as always, and of course the pre-recorded stuff I love doing like this as well. Leaving a like also really helps, and also the previous of the podcast, make sure you check that out because it's such a laugh, reacting to football's most unpopular and controversial opinions. Some funny ones there, some ridiculously funny and crazy, but also a bit of football discussion as well, which we like to do on the podcast. So definitely do check that out after you've watched this one. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to that admin. Let's get straight into it. And starting off, and we will start with Oxford United versus Blackpool first, because I think I've got a bit more to say on that, simply because I've had the pleasure to watch Oxford United through this season, and not that it's been a pleasure at all times, but I've been able to watch Oxford United for a lot of the season. So obviously I have been able to be able to do that, and also I've got a little bit more to write and talk about with you. So we'll start off then earlier in the season. 0-0 was the game. Blackpool really started the season quite slowly as well, and in the second half of the season they really started to pick it up, and they now really are an extremely dangerous side. A great football inside under the ex-Liverpool under-23s reserves coach. Really, really good manager there. Bought some really, really good players in the summer. Started off a little bit slow. Maybe it was that sort of like fitting in, sort of what's the word? Integrating all the players of the squad. And then the second half of the season, they've really, really taken to the challenge, and they now are third in the league for a reason. They finished there, and then obviously they've really, really finished at a respectable finish in the league. So really, really happy if you're a Blackpool fan, I'm sure. But they did start the season quite slowly, but the second half of the season they have been absolutely phenomenal. At this point in the season, Oxford, when we drew 0-0 in the season, Oxford were really trying to get into the rhythm of things, and that unbeaten run, the draws against Hull and Ipswich were the two games that were off the back of this game. That really was the confidence and the unbeaten run, the winning run that ultimately has got us into the position we're in right now. Without that 9 winning run, without those crucial draws against Ipswich, who were still really in for a shout at that point in the season, and Hull, of course, who have obviously won the league and going up straight back into the Championship. And those draws and that confidence we took from those games, and then of course in Blackpool as well, was so important. Ultimately, without those, we certainly wouldn't be where we are right now. Of course, Sam Long was man of the match in that game. We maybe could have even won the game in the last minute. Massinho came up, the captain, or should I say the club captain, who's been injured for the rest of the season. But the club captain comes up, nearly scores a late winner. It would have been a very, very good 3 points. But really, it was quite a fair result. It was quite tactical. It was quite a hard-fought battle, really. Quite a rough game of football. But also, it was just two teams going at each other. And really, the fairest result was always going to be a draw. But that's the way that was. And that's how the game finished. 0-0, 50-50% possession as well, again showing it down to statistics. It was a very, very tight encounter. their goalkeeper was man of the match. Maybe that does say a different story on the game, but that save in the last minute from Mousinho's header might have been the really, really, might have been the talking point there, and maybe the reason why he was given that man of the match. But I expect the more, to be honest with you, I do expect more of the same in the semi-final. Players can also, are normally edgy encounters. I'm going to expect the same here. However, in the second game against these two sides, when we lost 2-0, Oxford were beaten fair and square. It was a very, very fair and square defeat. We looked poor, we were rusty, we were worrying performance, I think were the words I used back when I did that live episode of the podcast. It was very, very poor. We weren't good at all. We didn't get any rhythm. Off the back of a great result against Doncaster on 3-0, that was the first team we beat that were in the top six. We were full of confidence, full of good spirit. And then we ultimately bottled it and didn't play very, very well at all. Blackpool dominated the game. And if that's anything like it is in the playoffs on Tuesday and then on Friday, we're going to be in big trouble. If we play like we did against Blackpool the second time round, we're going to regret the opportunity, because we're better than how we played against Blackpool. We've shown that in recent weeks. The games against Shrewsbury, the games against Gillingham, those results in particular, coming from behind and showing that fantastic quality that we know we have. That's what we need to show in the playoffs. And against Blackpool in the second game, we did not show any of that. Arguably in the first game, it was 0-0. But in that game, there was a bit of battle, there was a bit of fight, there was a bit of want and urgency from the opposition and from Oxford United, and that's what we need to show. We almost need to show that and then much more. The 0-0 draw, take the qualities defensively from that, but then show the qualities we know we've got going forward, the attacking players that are so ruthless. We've got clinical as well, Matty Taylors, the Brandon Barkers, the Shadipos, the Henrys, the Sykes, the Lees, these fantastic players that we know can be a difference. Another thing as well, when we played against Blackpool the first time around, we didn't have those sort of players. No excuse in the second game though, we were very, very poor. But that's sort of my preview and thoughts earlier in the season. Of course, you're probably here for my prediction. I'll give that right now. I think Oxford in the first leg, I'm lucky enough to actually go that, being a season ticket holder at Oxford United. I can't wait to get back in there. Obviously, for the first time in well over a year, back in Grenoble Road, back at the Kassam. So happy to be back. I'm so delighted and so fortunate to be able to go back into the stadium and watch Oxford United versus Blackpool's first leg of this playoff. And I think Oxford United will win 1-0. However, that second leg, it's going to be tight, it's going to be close. I think Blackpool are going to edge it in that second game. I think they're going to win 1-0. And I think when predicting your own team, you're in a bit of a no-win. You predict them a win, you're known as biased. You're a biased fan. Of course you're going to predict a win. He's an Oxford United fan. If you predict them lose, you're negative and you're not confident. So you really can't really win when you're doing that. And striking a balance is very, very difficult. However, I do think it's going to go to extra time, and I'm going to call it right now. I don't want it to go to penalties. I can't go through the Portsmouth penalty nerves again, but I'm going to predict that we do. This is a prediction. This isn't what I want. If it was down to what I want, Oxford United are going to win 2-0 in the first leg, and then maybe win the second leg and comfortably breeze through that semi-final. But let's be realistic here. Blackpool are a great side. I think Oxford will win the playoffs. Win this leg. They certainly won't win the playoffs. I don't think that's still got to be decided through to get there first. I think Oxford United will win this semi-final, but it's going to be so edgy, it's going to be so difficult. But I think we've got what it takes. We need to be, just need to start strong, take something to Blackpool, take something to Bloomfield Road. We certainly need to take an advantage. We need to take at least a 1 or 2 goal lead, to be honest with you. We can't go there trailing. We certainly, we can't go there drawing. We certainly can't go there losing, because that is going to be a really uphill, difficult battle going to Blackpool. Remember, Blackpool will have fans, as well as Oxford will have fans, obviously, for the home leg as well. So there is a slight home advantage now. Back home advantages will be back into play. So it's going to be difficult, but in the end, I think Oxford United will edge it on penalties in that semi-final, but it's going to be very, very tight. Oxford winning the first leg 1-0, and then Blackpool winning the second leg. Very, very tight. We've spoken about it. Let's see about the second semi-final then. Lincoln against Sunderland. To be honest, this, again, I think it's always going to be tight. It's always going to be tight. And I think this one's just going to be, I think this one's also going to be very, very tight as well, which is a bit of a worry. But for Lincoln and Sunderland fans, arguably, that's a bit of a worry. But that's Wednesday's game, the first game, and that's Lincoln versus Sunderland. And we will look earlier this season like we did as well. It was the first time they played each other was Lincoln 0, Sunderland 4-0 to Lincoln in that game. So ruthless. Lincoln Sunderland were clinical in that game. Dominant Sunderland win. No doubt the scoreline reflects that. The stats also suggested a very clinical performance on Sunderland. From watching them, you can see how clinical they are as a team. We recently played them. We lost 3-1. Oxford United, I think it was the 4th game before the end of the season. They were ruthless. They were clinical. They were very, very good. And they give them an opportunity, they're going to take it. They got the players like McGeady, they got Max Power in that midfield, they've got some quality defenders, they've got a spine, and a strong spine to go by at Sunderland that is so difficult. And that first game, beating Lincoln 4-0, they're now playing the players. Lincoln will not be wanting to experience that ever again, but especially now going into these playoffs. And down to the bookies, Sunderland are the favourites to actually win the whole playoff campaign, which, it is difficult. It's going to be a difficult game, and, Black for Lincoln and Sunderland, but I think it's going to be tight as always. But that game was certainly not tight, but it shows again the quality that Sunderland have, how clinical they are. That shows it fair and square in that one. But they did play each other in the Papa John's semi-final, I believe, and then the next one in the league, it was a 1-1 draw against Sunderland versus Lincoln. That was, of course, at the Stadium of Light. Down to individual player stats, it looks like Lincoln were the better side, but the general stats show that it was a very, very different picture of the game. It looked like Sunderland very much dominated, a much different encounter between the two sides compared to the previous game. It was much tighter in that game. The scoreline certainly reflects that. The first game, they were absolutely done for. It looked like Lincoln, they were absolutely beaten and battered. But again, Sunderland once again dominating the ball, great possession stats. Sunderland with more shots, more chances. This Sunderland side, you can see why they're favourites. They're a great side, but we can't underestimate Lincoln, because Lincoln under Michael Appleton this season have been very, very good. I said in the predictions video, which is a new episode of the podcast going to come out very, very soon, reacting to my predictions at the start of the season. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that. I didn't actually predict Lincoln to where they were going to finish. I don't want to spoil too much, but I didn't predict Lincoln to finish too high. However, I did say they're a team to watch out for, and going into the next few years, but with Michael Appleton hopefully still as manager for them, adding players on and the good signings they've made, they're certainly a team to watch out for. However, this season they've proved that they're even better than that. They've certainly been a great side to watch, to be part of in League One. They've been a fantastic side, and that's why they're in the playoffs. They finished 5th for a reason. They're a great footballing side. And that was a very, very close encounter. They're certainly a team you cannot write off, and that's the most important thing. I think Sunderland are favourites in that game, if I'm being honest. I think Sunderland are favourites, certainly for the... I don't know, I think Sunderland are favourites to come out of that tie with a win, if I'm being honest. But you can't write Lincoln off. They can really pull a certain fantastic upset off, and I think they maybe can do that. Into my prediction, though, I think the first leg is going to be tight. I think the first leg at Lincoln is going to be a very, very tight game, and I have predicted a draw. I think it's going to be 1-1. However, the second leg, of course, it's going to decide everything going into a draw. I think Sunderland are going to win the game 1-0. Again, those scorelines and all the scorelines I've predicted in this podcast episode have been very, very tight, but I can see it being so tight. Both games, edgy encounters. You don't want to be the player that messes it up. You don't want to be the player that costs your team the playoffs, costs your team potentially even promotion. You don't want to be that team. So it's so difficult. It's not going to be an easy game, from sure, to watch being a fan. I'm certainly not going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy being back in the stadium, but I'm certainly not going to enjoy it. It's going to be a very, very nervous experience. I'll enjoy it, but I think it will be very, very nervous, of course. But in that second leg, I think Sunderland are going to win the game 1-0. That, of course, will send them through an aggregate 2-1. Very, very close games. Both legs really edgy. And that's probably the most used word I've used in this podcast. Edgy, close encounters. Edgy being the specific word, and then close encounters being such a difficult, but I think fair looking at the game. And both games as well. Of course, I want to be hearing from you as well. If you've got a team in the playoffs as well, let me know in the comments down below. I want to be seeing who you think will go through out of these games. If you haven't got a team, still let me know who you think will go through. But I want to hear from you, the fans, as well. So excited for these playoffs. Very, very nerve-wracking, of course. It's going to be a nervous experience, but I'm very, very excited for it. This was sort of a bit of an in-depth prediction preview on these two legs. I know a lot of people will just want to hear the scoreline. Fair enough, I can't blame you for it. But I wanted to delve deep into the games early this season. Maybe what to expect in terms of players to watch out for. I think every team's got one. I think Oxford United really should be what I think Oxford United got to be watching out for a lot of players. Brandon Barker, if he's on it, I think he's a player to really watch out for, of course. Matty Taylor's a clinical striker, and defensive as well. Rob Atkinson and Elliot Moore have been great players. Sam and our goalkeeper Jack Stevens, of course, has been great. Sam Long, we don't know the extent of that injury. Of course, he was injured in the last game against Burton on the final game of the season. A great 4-0 win to take into these playoffs. And we don't know to the extent of that injury. We're thinking that they're not making that public, maybe due to the fact that they don't want to give too much away, which is fair enough. It's tactical stuff. You can understand that. We don't know the extent of that injury. But if he is, he's a really solid player that I think Blackpool will want to look at. For Blackpool, they've got some great players, of course. Some really good players to watch out for. They've got Luke Garbett being one as well, a player that, of course, was at Oxford United a few years ago. He's been very good for Blackpool this season, and certainly one that I think we'll all remember being a decent player for Oxford, but he's doing even better, I'd say, at Ipswich and then now at Blackpool. For Lincoln, We've already spoken about it. Team of the Year podcast out two episodes ago. Great watch. Please do check that one out. I said Jorge Grant. Jorge Grant was has been absolutely fantastic this season. He's certainly a player to watch out for, with many others, but Jorge Grant is a player to watch out for, the midfielder for Lincoln City. He has been incredible this season. I expect more of the same in these playoffs games. For Sunderland, there's a load. There's Max Power, there's McGeady, Charlie Wyke, or Charlie Wick, however you pronounce it. I know I got an absolute slating for saying that in the comments. The last one, pronunciation, never my thing. I apologise for that. But the big striker, Charlie, of course, a really, really good player. And loads of players as well. There's hundreds, not hundreds. There's a lot of fantastic players for both of these, both sides and all sides in the league. Because without those fantastic players, they wouldn't be where they are. They wouldn't be playing for a chance of the Championship next season in these playoff games. Anyway, if you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, please make sure you hit like and also subscribe to the podcast as well. Like I said, so much content coming your way. If you have enjoyed this, please hit that like button. I've been Jack. This has been the Unfan Podcast. Give your thoughts down below. Stay safe. Good luck. I'll see you in a bit.